It's a Star Wars show, and I'm your host, John Justice. Glad you're with another episode. As always, if you want to email, TalkShowNerd@gmail.com, or if you're enjoying this week's episode up on YouTube, you can leave a comment there. We are mere weeks away from Star Wars Celebration taking place in Japan as we anticipate many announcements. Also, just a few more weeks away until Andor Season 2 drops on Disney+, and we'll be talking about that on this week's episode. We had a new trailer this week as well for Andor. Changes to this week's trailer, by the way, dropping a more traditional rock track in exchange for going back to, well, I'd say traditional Star Wars music, but that being said, there really wasn't a lot of music in it. Instead, hearkening back to that Imperial alarm that was used so prominently in the promos for the release of Rogue One. Now, it makes sense since Andor Season 2 does roll right into Rogue One. I want to get into an article that I found from Austin Goslin regarding this final trailer, and then talk a little bit about Andor Season 2 and its release schedule. And ask the question, and I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment up on YouTube or email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. But how do you intend to watch Andor Season 2, considering that we're going to be essentially getting a movie plus? I mean, it could potentially be 2 hours and 20 minutes of Star Wars content every single Tuesday. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
This is not going to go the way you think.
Now, I wouldn't say that I've been critical of Andor. I think that it is a spectacular show, and I think that it is great Star Wars. But it's also different Star Wars. I've mentioned that Andor doesn't have the fantasy element that I enjoy so much of Star Wars, lacks a little bit of the action that I like to see in my Star Wars. A show like Ahsoka is incredibly well-rounded if we're talking specifically about the live-action shows. It includes all of the elements that I enjoy the most. That being said, I will say that the writing and the production on Andor certainly is far and away better than what we get on Ahsoka, even though overall I enjoyed that series more. I've been doing a rewatch, though, of Andor, and I found a new Season 1. I found a new level of appreciation for this show that I didn't have before, and I imagine that I will be going back and revisiting Andor Season 1 probably more often than I thought upon a first watch. The trailers for Andor Season 2 and the expectation of what we might get in Season 2 leading into Rogue One definitely has me excited based off of the speculation that I've seen from other commentators. But let's get into this final trailer. Andor Season 2's final trailer reminds us it's the only Star Wars story to get the Rebels right. Disney has used a few different tactics to promote Andor ahead of its debut of its second season. There was an upbeat trailer and a free release of some first season episodes on YouTube, but it seems like the strategy it's settled on just before the release is one of doomed heroism, which is a perfect fit for the only Star Wars show to get the Rebel Alliance right. Those are tall words. I enjoy me some Rebels, and I thought that Rebels did a really good job getting the Rebel Alliance right, but let's see what Austin has to say. The trailer itself is fairly light on plot details. It does include a few important things. For instance, we see all the rebels from Season 1 are still kicking, and we know that they are indeed looking into the Death Star more directly this time around. It's just like the end of Season 1 hinted at. We also get a look at Krennic, Ben Mendelsohn, returning to his Rogue One role, one of the Death Star's principal architects. More importantly than the trailer's plot, however, is its overall tone, which matches Andor Season 1 perfectly. We get appearances from Cassian himself, Luthen Rael, Saw Gerrera, and more, all giving their best speeches about the importance of the Rebels' mission, and acknowledgments of how even success for their team will mean death. It's all right in line with the solemnness of the first season, and a good indication that we're once again in for some excellent television. The fact is, the rebellion in Star Wars has often gotten the short end of the narrative stick. They mostly have their act together in A New Hope, even if they have to get saved by Luke. But by the time we get to the end of Return of the Jedi, they're in a bit of disarray. Then the sequel trilogy shows us that apparently they're totally inept at governing and mostly let the Empire stick around in the form of the First Order, making us wonder what we were rooting for in the first place. Thankfully, Andor's first season, and now hopefully its second, exists to show us that somewhere in the rebellion was a group of people who understood perfectly what they were fighting for and would do anything in their power to rid the galaxy of fascism, even if it all resulted in Palpatine returning. You know, but listen, that happens, by the way. I'll just add in. It's not like evil simply gets eradicated every time at the end of a war. Plus, in the Star Wars universe, we're not dealing with real-world rules and operations. The article writer goes on to say, but regardless of the not-so-great conclusion to the Rebel story in the rest of the series, at least Andor Season 2 seems to be closing this chapter out with dignity. So before we get into how are we going to watch Season 2, it's going to be interesting to see, once we get done with Andor and sort of look at just the period of Andor and the original trilogy as a whole. There's an interesting sort of flow to it. You'll never be able to get sort of the full scope, just given the fact that you are looking at 2 full seasons of a television series leading into Rogue One, which of course leads directly into A New Hope. But as I've said many times on the show, I appreciate the additional context that these outside of the films we get with these live action shows that lend to the enjoyment of the movies that, in my case, and I guess for your case too, that we've grown up with. So by the time we get done with Andor Season 2 and we have the complete Andor Season 1 and 2, combined with Rogue One, which already adds an abundance of context when going in and watching A New Hope, and it adds many different new layers of enjoyment to A New Hope, I get the feeling that in combination with The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, looking at specifically the Rebel Alliance, as mentioned in the article, we're going to have a much clearer picture and perspective because of what is done in Andor Season 2, which, again, raises the question in my mind of what comes of the new films in a post-Episode 9 world in terms of the timeline and the storytelling. And also, what ends up happening with the sequel trilogy once we have the entirety of the tales within the Mandoverse that lead into The Force Awakens finally told 5-6 years down the line. A lot of negativity around Star Wars over the course of the past few years based off of, the hits and misses of the live-action TV shows. But I'm hopeful that Andor Season 2 is going to be the first step in ushering in the next phase of what we will be able to enjoy in terms of Star Wars content, both on the small screen at home and on the big screen at the movies.
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
How are you going to watch Season 2? The final season will unfold over 12 episodes, broken down into 4 chapters of 3 episodes each. The first chapter will premiere on April 22nd, 3 episodes in full, with the subsequent chapters debuting each week that follows. So again, Disney Plus will air 3 episodes of Andor a week across 4 weeks. The chapters thing isn't necessarily new. The first season was also comprised of 3-episode arcs, and the show launched with the first 3 episodes all dropping at once. What is new is the decision to effectively burn off the final season of the Star Wars series in a month's time. So 3 episodes per week for 4 weeks, with each chapter covering roughly a year's time, I believe, all directly leading into Rogue One. So we're going to have these gaps of time leading into Rogue One. For as much as I want to watch them all in one drop, that's going to be a tough haul, considering you're looking at potentially, if you round out the run times of all 12 episodes of Season 1, about 138 minutes per week. That's 2 hours plus. That's a movie. Now, the first season played out in 3 story arcs, but they broke them up. I'd wished personally that they would release them all on a Friday. That would make the most sense to me from a practical standpoint. But I sense that this is kind of a test for Disney Plus, and thusly they have some internal data that shows that this could be a good thing for streaming rankings. So I'll just ask you the question: how are you going to end up watching the show? Are you going to sit down and watch all 3 episodes on Tuesday, essentially committing yourself to a 2-hour-plus movie every week, or will you break it up throughout the week? I don't have an answer on my end yet. That's tough for me because of my own personal schedule to sit down and watch a movie of that size unless I break it up throughout the day. And it's also something that I like to enjoy firsthand with my family. And so waiting for Kyle to get home from work, or Logan to get home from school and Logan to get home from work could be difficult. I know these are problems that must be solved, but at the moment, I don't know how I'm going to watch it yet. So I'd love to hear from you. What are your plans on watching Andor Season 2, given its release schedule? Drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com, or leave a comment up on YouTube. Speaking of which,
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
got a couple of emails this week. First, we'll hear from Philip Cole Castellani, who writes this: I'm okay if Dave Filoni is the successor of Darth Kennedy because he's made some good Star Wars, like the Ahsoka series and the Bad Batch, the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels. He did make The Mandalorian with Jon Favreau, so I'm okay with it since he's made some good Star Wars. Though I also feel like Filoni was involved in the bad direction of The Acolyte, directed by Leslie Headland. So while I'm okay with him taking over because of some of the good Star Wars he's made in the past, I'd prefer Jon Favreau to take over, though. Yeah, my view is that more than likely Dave Filoni is going to be the heir apparent to Kathleen Kennedy once she does officially decide to leave. And I personally, as I've mentioned, am completely fine with that, just given what a great job he's done in the storytelling. And Rebels specifically is some of the best Star Wars storytelling outside of what George Lucas created. We also heard from Balix Jax 8694, who writes this: love your EMBARK space opera series. Thanks, John. Well, thank you so much, and I'm glad that you enjoy it. And if you have not had the opportunity to take a look at my 7-book series, I hope you'll do so. Katha's father died 1 year ago. Yesterday, he gave her the key to saving humanity. She just doesn't know it yet. Deep inside D-Corp, the planet's largest civilian and military spacecraft factory, an industrial accident has set off a catastrophic chain of events. Unaware of the disaster, Taft Guardia eagerly agrees to help fellow pilot Katha Morrow investigate a cryptic message from her past. War erupts as D-Corp's ruthless leader attempts to exploit the chaos and seize control. Meanwhile, Taft and Katha discover what may be the only hope of saving Earth's evacuees from annihilation if they can survive the apocalypse first. EMBARK is a fun, fast-paced, and action-packed science fiction adventure without an agenda. So do yourself a favor and support the podcast that I do. Treat yourself, a friend, or a family member with science fiction. I wrote the series for adults, but it is completely age-appropriate for those 11 and older. Pick up EMBARK Book 1 today. Available in ebook, Kindle Unlimited, hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. That's all 7 books in the series. Listen, you like science fiction space opera because you're listening to this podcast. EMBARK is filled with romance, some really cool technology, a lot of unique action sequences. Available on Amazon.com. Just search for Embark and John, Jon Justice, and you can be like that listener. You can enjoy it too. Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode. I look forward to hearing from you. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. Until then, I hope wherever you are happy, you're healthy, and you're safe. I'll talk to you again next week. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.